everybody, so we're back talking some more of the Lord of the Rings of Power on the channel with episode 4. This is actually the midway point of season 1, which does feel kind of weird to say because I feel like storyline-wise we haven't really accomplished all that much, even though we're halfway through a season. It just feels to me like we're going a little bit slow, and that does continue in episode 4, but it does seem like we are finally setting up big pieces to come for the second half of the season. Like usual, the narrative hops between multiple different storylines, swapping some out and bringing some characters back in, like Elrond and Durin are back into the fold in this one in place of the Harfoots. There's no Harfoot action this time around, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you feel about their storyline. The bulk of episode 4 still is more focused on Galadriel and Numenor, still stirring up some conflicts along the way. I mean, she's not the only one stirring up conflicts, as there is a lot more of Pharazôn in this episode compared to the last one, where he kind of was a background character. This time, he is much more in focus, and he is rallying the people against Galadriel. One of the aspects I did like a lot about this storyline is the dynamic between Galadriel and the Queen Regent Miriel, because we do see it gradually shift over the course of the episode. In the very beginning of the episode, Galadriel is trying her best to get the Queen Regent Miriel on her side, showing her the scrolls in an attempt to reforge an alliance to face Sauron and reclaim the Southlands, but she does immediately turn her down, and it does make for some funny comedic moments in my opinion, because Galadriel just goes off and demands to speak to the king, and she gets thrown in jail for her troubles. After how much I enjoyed Elendil in episode 3, I was a bit bummed out that he wasn't really as heavily featured in this episode. He pretty much became a background character. I mean, both of his kids get a little bit more screen time, but unfortunately both of them kind of feel inconsequential. His daughter has like this budding romance that just feels very out of place with all the storylines going on. And as for Isildur, we do know his importance to Lord of the Rings in the far, far future, but as for right now, I don't really know how I feel about this young Isildur getting kicked off the ship with his friends, and it seems like in the end of this episode he's going to go into battle with everyone. Hopefully we get more development for him, because right now I'm not overly impressed with like this young Isildur compared to the one from like Lord of the Rings. With the cliffhanger ending last week where Arondir, still captured by the orcs, was going to be introduced to Adar, the father of these orcs, the leader, I was intrigued to just see what this Adar was all about, because he did look like an elf of some sort in the blurry little visual we did get. And I have to say, with the reveal of him in this episode, I left a little bit underwhelmed, unfortunately. As someone who's a fan of Game of Thrones, I noticed right off the bat that the actor that plays Adar also played Benjen Stark in Game of Thrones. The very few scenes of his character we do get in the episode where he's interacting with Arondir or the orcs, he absolutely seems like a sinister, ominous presence, but his screen time is so fairly limited, we still have no idea anything about this character, what his backstory is, anything that could be like important and integral to getting me more interested in his character as a whole. And then he lets Arondir go free, because he gives him a message to give to Bronwyn and all them, and that's how they factor into the same storyline. Among the plethora of storylines in the Rings of Power, Theo's storyline only really fascinates me because of the fact he does have the hilt that has the mark of Sauron on it. And it seems like we're finally getting some sort of progression for the story when he goes out to get supplies, completely ignores all of the red flag warning signs of all the dead animal carcasses around the area, attacked by orcs once again. It really seems like this kid has no awareness when it comes to danger levels. This is what, the second time now he's been attacked by orcs in 4 episodes, and it does lead to some good tension. I will give it that here, that the scenes where he's hiding from the orcs, trying his best to not get caught, made for some good tension. At least until conveniently Arondir appears to save him at the very last moment and lead him away from the orcs. I actually did like the scene a lot, but I will say, I think between this episode and the last one, they're kind of overdoing it when it comes to the slow-mo, because I like a good action slow-mo sequence, but they're going on for so long in these episodes that it just feels kind of odd. If I had to pick a favorite storyline of episode 4, it would be the one involving Elrond, Durin, and Disa. It has the most life to it, the most personality, and I think a large part of that is due to the fact that Disa and Durin are such fun, energetic characters. Before we get to them though, we do get a teeny bit of Elrond and Celebrimbor seeing the tower being built, but the fun doesn't come until Elrond goes to see Disa and Durin, because he's suspicious of things that he's doing over there in those mines. That was where all the fun came into the storyline for me, is seeing Disa try her best to cover up for Durin, and Elrond really doesn't believe her at all, but he still goes to snoop around anyway. It was probably obvious to most longtime fans of Lord of the Rings what Durin was down there mining, but it was still cool to see that he was down there mining Mithril. We have seen hints of it in the previous episodes of the Rings of Power, this longtime friendship between Durin and Elrond, but I think in episode 4 it was the best representation of their long-term friendship and just how much they actually care for one another when Elrond is doing his best to give advice to Durin when it comes to talking to his father later on. Whether it's that or the conversations in the mines themselves where Elrond is force forced to swear upon the rock he won't tell his soul about what's going on in the mines. Stuff like that. The friendship angles and that kind of stuff is the things I enjoyed out of Lord of the Rings back in the day, and we haven't had a whole lot of those kind of developments in the Rings of Power so far, so I'm taking anything I can get at this point. You've got to love that Galadriel's now being forced to speak to Halbrand again because they're jail buddies, and speaking more on Halbrand, I do kind of feel bad because he's stuck in jail the entire episode, but it seems like we're getting more and more pieces of potential backstory for his character. Since when Galadriel speaking to Queen Regent Muriel earlier, she does mention the fact that she thinks that he's the lost heir in exile to the throne in the Southlands. As headstrong as Galadriel has been this entire show so far, every now and then we do get little bits and pieces here and there of people getting to her when it comes to advice or just conversations in general, like Halbrand is giving her advice on her approach to things, and then she still kind of goes off in her own way. You know, she throws the guards in jail, breaks out of jail, breaks in to see the king, and he's looking pretty rough, which does lead to more of the conflict between her and Queen Regent Muriel, and they do kind of eventually get some sort of middle ground. Mainly when Galadriel's presented with a Palantir and she's shown the visions of the fall of Numenor coming true, and we also saw earlier on in the episode that Queen Regent Muriel is also having those same nightmares. Each of our storylines do set up some intriguing plot threads for the rest of the season. Durin is going to go to Lindon with Elrond. You have Arondir going back with the message from Adar, which basically is vacate the land and serve them or die, which makes sense to me. But the biggest one of them all is the alliance seemingly is now formed, and we are going to go into battle. We're going to gather an army together. You got Galadriel, Isildur, Elendil, all of them. So hopefully in the next episode and on, that's going to be very exciting to see them going into battle. But yeah, all around, episode 4 is an okay episode. It's certainly not one of my favorites among the seasons so far. It feels like we're still kind of stretching things out a bit too much, like we're finally getting to the big major conflicts in the second half of the season. So I hope that the second half of the season sticks to landing a little bit more. But like I said, Elrond, Durin, and Disa were great. Some of the Galadriel stuff was fine too. I just really hope that this show sticks to landing in the second half of the season. But make sure you share your thoughts down below. What'd you think of episode 4 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power? Did you like the episode? Dislike the episode? Share all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Part of the funnest time in the conversation with you guys in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for the reviews. I always do appreciate that. Make sure to like on the video and also subscribe to the channel so we update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Next time, we'll see you guys later.